Hi everyone, this is Vanessa from The Hand That Feeds HQ, and this is another review in the Hand That Feeds HQ's Review Advent Calendar 2021. This time around we're going to review Tokyo Color Sonic's Begin on Buddy. This is a suggestion by Raf-chan. So let's start reviewing this song, shall we? Yeah, funky as hell to start. First of all, if you guys have been listening to music from the 80s, 90s, and noughties, you will notice that this is a really old school way to start a song. And the instrumental is really old school in that, or at least it winks at old school elements from pop and R&B music. It has a lot of funk going on right from the start in the guitars, with that really good riff going on in the intro. So the song, of course, is going to build up into something different. I hope, or at least I am anticipating, with a good bass line, because that's what you need to expect from there, especially from a song that is already hinting at being extremely funky. Yep. Okay, pretty interesting. We have a couple of things going on in here that I would like to really talk to you about. First of all, we have the massive bass line. Then we have the wah-wah guitars. It's a nice accent to add to a song. It adds, of course, once again, that funky vibe that you are listening to from the very first second, and it adds a little bit of a danceable vibe to a song that doesn't necessarily have a danceable sound to begin with, because the beat is not really made for the dance floor. You couldn't say this is an EDM song or a pop song made to dance, at least from the very intro. You can see that this is a funky song. Yes, it will make you dance, but it is not a pop song. Interesting is that, on the contrary, the vocals are pretty much pop. It's textbook pop performance. It has a little bit of R&B riffing in the mix, which is interesting, as you got to listen to before I stopped the song, with Shoichiba and Gakuto Kajiwara tackling that part. Shoichiba, of course, Shoichiba is a tenor, and you can expect him to be there harmonizing with whoever has high notes. I don't see him doing that with the lowest notes, but I don't expect this song to go for that direction, at least vocally. You may want to have everyone in the mid-tones and some of those members in the high tones, but not in the lowest ones, because you have a funky song with a good bass line. You don't want to make the bass line sound murky, or on the opposite, make the vocals sound murky because of the bass line. So you will want, in terms of vocal direction, to have a good balance between the instrumental and the vocals, and you can get that by asking everyone to perform in the mid-tones, or even higher if they can. Not necessarily go that low, because they will come into contact with the bass and they may make the sound murky all over, or just murky the vocals, or just murky the instrumental. Yep. Notice that. You have Soma Saito there, which was the first person that performed as soon as I hit play. He's a tenor, a really skilled tenor with a very, very high range and an even more impressive low range. And he's actually performing as a tenor. Actually trying to add a little bit of a faux baritone hint in the mix to sound rounder and fuller. And at the same time, you have Shunsuke Takeuchi, the last voice that you heard before I pressed stop, that is known as a baritone with a massive bass range. And he's actually performing as a tenor here, which is interesting because he also has a massive range up to tenor that he can tap into, like he did in this part. And you notice once again what I was saying before, that they chose not to put all singers performing in the bass range to avoid it clashing with the bass line. Those synth hits dun, 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 are really characteristic of 90s pop music. If you guys haven't heard any music from the 90s, especially pop, and especially from the late 90s, you'll notice that those elements are really old school. Once again, those are nods to old school music. Those are really interesting nods to R&B pop, which fits really well with this lineup, as you have Shoya Chiba, who is a tenor, Soma Saito, who is a tenor, Gakuto Kajiwara, who is a baritone with tenor range, and Shusuke Takeuchi, that is basically a baritone with a full bass range and a bit of tenor range to him. So you have a lineup that is basically rather balanced in the way that they can all go to a higher range. They all know how to tackle those midtones, so that's pretty much flawless right there. If you want to have the song riding on those, they all can pull those off really easily. And then you have, if you need some accents on the vocal end or to do some contrasts, you can actually ask of the singers to raise the tone or lower the tone, and they can actually do that because they are that versatile as a unit, which is pretty interesting. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoy this lineup, is because they can cover a really wide vocal range, and they have at least two incredibly skilled singers within it and two rising stars that are really showing how they do it and are really honing their skills and sounding better with each song. Now, that's a good part. Let's go, harmonies. Yeah. I'm going to stop there because I've said it a couple of times before. This song sounds really murky in the chorus, and that's because whoever mixed the song felt that it was a good idea to have both the instrumental and the voices at the same loudness levels, which isn't advised. It doesn't sound good in the final mixing. I don't know how this song actually got an okay to be distributed like this, because the vocals sound completely messed up in that part. You barely can notice who is performing that part because they are singing the same part. They are stacked in the production, so you have them singing at the same time, the same parts, no real difference there between the way each singer performed, aside from the English pronunciation, because you have three good, really good English speakers in this group, Shusuke Takeuchi, Gakuto Kajiwara, and Soma Saito, and of course you have Shoya Chiba that did his best effort here. Awesome performance, but you can tell that he is not really that comfortable performing in English. Still, you have the four singers performing at the same time. You have a big, big problem. Like I said before, they do have some balance on the vocal end. They all can cover mid-tones, they all can go high, and they all can go low. The issue that comes with these is that if the song doesn't want them to go low, as you may have noticed, no one is going on the lowest range or in the lowest vocal range performing this song. They are all in the mid and the high tones, and mainly mid-tones. The problem that comes with everyone performing in the mid-tones is that if they do not have any quirk to their voice, they will be assimilated by each other. And what happens is that they will sound as one, but you can't really tell who is performing. There won't be any spotlight for anyone because they are always performing the same part in the same sound level. and with a contrasting instrumental that is exactly on the same loudness level. That's messed up from a production point, and I can understand it being a stylistic thing from the producer and later on from the mixer, but that doesn't make the vocals shiny in any way, especially because this is the chorus. And of course, you can listen to Shuya Chiba because he's the center or he's the face of the project. And is actually the voice that is stacked first in the mix. And quite possibly with the sound level slightly higher than everyone else. Then you have in the background Gakuto Kajiwara, Shunsuke Takeuchi, and Soma Saito, and the three of them are performing the same part, almost with the same English pronunciation and exactly on the same tone, which doesn't make it easy to tell anyone apart. Does it sound good to you? For me, it doesn't sound good. And I actually was surprised when I listened to the individual or the solo versions, because the solo versions illustrate really well how good of a performance each singer gave. And there's actually pretty interesting details unique to each singer that you can't even notice in this chorus, because all four vocals are stacked, performing the same thing. They aren't really necessarily in unison because, well, they are, because you are listening to four voices as one. It doesn't flatter the voices, it doesn't flatter the singers. I believe that unison should be used with some attention. It can be used to enhance the tension to songs, it can give it a really epic vibe, but in a song like this, adding a unison sounds strange. This is a funky song, you want to listen to the voices individually and then they come together in a different part. It can be the tails of the chorus, it can be an intermission before the second verse, but you have them performing the same part, the same tone, same sound level, clashing with an instrumental exactly with the same sound level. The chorus sounds murky, at least the very first part of the chorus, which is the part that we have just listened to. Now I'm going to put play, and the second part of the verse will sound extremely clear to you. Notice the difference. The difference there is that we stopped having unison and then the producer split the vocals, which is to say, we now, instead of having four at the same time, we have two at the same time. We are using each vocal to contrast each other. So we have on one side Gakuto Kashiwara, on the other Shuya Chiba, on one side Soma Saito, on the other Shunsuke Takeuchi, and you mix and match those voices because you can contrast those voices because they have unique singing voices. You were just not understanding or telling those apart because the first part of the chorus is a mess. So right here, because you have split the vocals and have made it possible for each vocal to have a little bit of a spotlight, because you don't have four performing the same part, you have two performing the same part, and you are constantly changing who are the pairs performing that line. So that's much different in the approach that you have to the vocals. In this way, you can actually put the spotlight on each of the vocals, because you can listen to those clearly. I could tell everyone that was singing that part. In the chorus, I couldn't tell beyond, of course, Shuya Chiba that was leading the way. In that part, Shuya Chiba, of course, stands out because his sound levels, or the sound levels in his part, are high. But everyone else was a little bit like a needle in a haystack. You can't really tell who is standing out the most because they are nullifying each other. It's weird. The second part of the chorus is actually the cleanest, and you can listen to the English part really clean. You can listen to everyone singing their parts and adding their own flair. Up until now, you barely even noticed that Shunsuke Takeuchi is performing in R&B style, and is actually adding R&B riffing to his performance. At the same time, you have Suma Saito that has actually, I don't think he actually understood the direction there, because he went full on sexy for his part. He's actually whispering his part in a mix of mid and high notes. He's actually understood this part. I'm just making a joke. Then you have Gakuto Kajiwara and Shoichiba that are in the mid-tones. They really hold the group together because they are the most consistent at center, or in the most common vocal range that a man has. Shunsuke and Soma really are on contrasting parts of the vocal range. They add depth and a bit of clarity to the music, but you really need those robust notes by Gakuto Kajiwara and Shoichiba, and they are delivering those, and you barely could notice that when you were listening to the very first part of the chorus. So I do have my issues with the very first part of the chorus. Of course, not many people has those, but it really sounds messed up and really, really murky. It's not even clean in the way the chorus was created, at least the very first part of it. The second part is a massive contrast, and if you are listening to this song from start to finish without any interruptions like I am doing, you'll notice that, well, this part sounds a bit odd. But then, whoa, look at those vocals. You can actually listen to the English parts really, really clean. You couldn't listen to those in the very first part. That's an issue. I would say an issue with mixing. It's not an issue with the voice actors, because when you listen to the solo versions that were released recently by Sprout on streaming platforms, you notice that everyone was singing really, really well. The mixing made them sound bad. Notice how both are in the R&B register, or using an R&B technique. Both Saito and Takeuchi are really embracing those melodic, really alluring notes and giving it a twist of R&B in the mix, which is rare of Saito, and it's really common with Takeuchi. The way the chorus is structured is made to have the voices contrasting. Once again, notice how the voices are contrasting. You have Soma Saito versus Shunsuke Takeuchi, and you can listen to both really well because they are in completely different vocal ranges. Then you have Shoichiba that is singing a bit higher than usual, and then you have Gakuto Kajiwara that is performing really comfortable in the mid-tones, those warm, honeyed mid-tones that he has used us to. So that's really interesting as a way to structure the parts. You don't have all members performing the parts, you don't split the same part in four, you basically split a verse in two and have a pair going and another pair going, instead of having them taking turns in a really basic pop fashion. This build-up is fantastic because you go with those notes. You have high notes in the background if you pay attention, but the instrumental quiets down a bit, and of course the electronic is going to pull you up to that drop in the chorus. But up until then you have a lot of tension and a lot of funky goodness, but that stops a bit to prepare you for the next part. And the next part, of course, is that overwhelming chorus that is half good and half bad. Let's go. A really interesting fact. In that section, you have the four vocals performing, but you notice who is it at center stage? Shuichiba. Of course, he is the face of the project, it's usual, and you would expect that to happen. But that's what's interesting about it is that he's at center stage, and then Gakuto Kajiwara is next to him. And then, if you're listening to headphones like I am, you listen to Soma Saito on your left and Shunsuke Takeuchi on your right. And they are really far in the back. They are supporting the song and they are making it really easy for the midtones to shine because they are contrasting in the background. And their performances are on a level, at least the sound was lowered to make them still audible, but they are now a part of the detail in the background and not a detail on the vocals. Nice part. Yep. Let's go. Let's go. Notice how you can have the four vocals at the same time and make them sound good because you ask them to cover different vocal ranges, so they will stand out even if they perform in a unison because they are performing in different vocal ranges. Interesting, because you now can listen clearly to Shunsuke Takeuchi that is performing as a baritone and lowering his tone for the very first time within the song. Then you have Soma Saito that was asked to do the same, but since he's a tenor, he sounds smoother in his performance. Then you have Gakuto Kajiwara. You are stacking the vocals, notice that. Then you have Gakuto Kajiwara that is on the midtones, and then on top, on the very top, you have Shoya Chiba, who is performing in a tenor register and is actually going for a bit of a higher set of notes. You stacked the four vocals, but you have them harmonizing in that part, and everyone sounds clear. Everyone sounds really, really good. Each of them are doing their own thing. Once again, I do not know why that chorus doesn't work because the rest of the song has a really good mixing. It's just that chorus that doesn't work. An interesting bit, that pounding bass line, boom, 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 is accentuating those synth hits or synth steps going on in the background that give it the 90s R&B pop vibe, I would say. The song isn't innovative, it's actually a big nod to the 90s. Doesn't sound new to me because, once again, I was born in the 90s, so I listen to plenty of songs with this kind of structure. But it is refreshing to find within 2D music because that's not usually used. That's something that makes Tokyo Color Sonic, and especially this song, Begin on Buddy, sound really good to me, and I really love that funky touch and slight R&B influence that is going on in there, especially because it has influenced the way the singers are performing. They are performing not in the standard pop style, they are actually embracing the style of R&B and even adding a bit of flavor there with some riffing in the mix, mainly courtesy of Shunsuke Takeuchi, but also a little bit you can hear on Soma Saito's side. that's funky goodness for me in terms of instrumental. The song has really, really good vibes. I like the way it nods at the 90s R&B pop trend, and it captures a lot that flavor and that style that was going on in that era. Although, of course, that's a reimagined sound to match what we now have as trendy music. At the same time, I like to listen the various ways in which the singers approached the lyrics. That's not really clear in this version. Of course, I have listened to the solo version, so I know what is going on in the background. For those listening to this song for the very first time without prior checking the solo versions, you will not get that clear analysis of this song. At least I didn't on my very first listen, and especially when I reviewed this song, I really didn't notice much beyond that murky chorus. Of course, I suspected that the individual parts or the solo parts were really good because whenever you had only two singers performing at the same time, they actually were shining. So it couldn't be an issue with the vocals, it could be an issue with the mixing, and it actually is an issue with the mixing when you listen to the solo versions. So the mixing is odd, it doesn't necessarily make the song bad. If you can go past that and you actually don't mind having it's almost 15-20 seconds of unison that sounds a bit murky in each chorus. If you put that past you, you can really enjoy this song. I know that I have actually put that past me, but it still clashes a bit with what I've learned as a music composer and mixer, that you really shouldn't do that, and they actually did stack the vocals and put the vocals with the same loudness levels as the instrumental there, and it really sounds messed up. It is far from sounding clear, and as a composer you want the song to sound clear at all times. You want to put the spotlight in specific instruments, of course, and in specific voices. That's once again instructions that you have when you are mixing a song, but you will never have an instruction that says please make the chorus sound murky, so put everyone in the same loudness levels. I don't care. That's weird. You wouldn't usually do that. I will take these as they wanted to approach this song intentionally in this way. I don't know what they wanted to accomplish with this. Perhaps the fact that they are all in unison, they are all together with one purpose. That can be one approach to why they are singing in that way and in the same sound with the same loudness levels. That's a way you can interpret that, but still, for someone that is, for example, trying to enjoy this song outside of knowing how the franchise works or which franchise it is, because some people really download the songs or listen to the songs because their favorite voice actors are there, not because they like the projects themselves. So, out of context, this song will sound weird, but within context, it's a really, really good song. I like the funky nods to the 90s, I like the danceable sound without going for EDM, and I really like the lineup. Shoya Chiba, Soma Saito, Gakuto Kajibara, and Shunsuke Takeuchi really are a really star-studded lineup. There's a lot of talent there, there's plenty of experience there, just from the two 81 Produce members, which is to say Soma Saito and Shunsuke Takeuchi. So you have a lot of experience coming from them, and then you have the eagerness, the passion, and the want to impress in Shoya Chiba and Gakuto Kajiwara. So you have the perfect lineup and the perfect setting to make them shine, so you want to make them shine. The chorus would have worked in a different way for me if I was the one composing and mixing the song. But other than that, the song is pretty much flawless. I like the vibe, I like the tone, I like the vocals, and it really made me excited for this project. Once again, aside that really small dent in the quality from the mixing. But once again, please notice that the mixing made the vocals sound bad, not because the vocals were sounding bad, the mixing was bad. That's the really interesting part. People usually don't pay much attention to the production side of the music, and of course, you are listening to the final product, so the song already went through production, mixing, and mastering. But for those with a keener eye for this type of detail, you don't need to be a music composer to notice this, of course. You only need to be someone that is a passionate fan of music. You will notice that detail, but well, that's a quirk in the mixing, and they actually ended up solving that midway through the first set of CDs, which is good. This was my analysis of Tokyo Color Sonic and its, of course, flagship song, Begin on Body. The song is performed by Shoya Chiba, Soma Saito, Gakuto Kajibara, and Shunsuke Takeuchi. It's a really massive song. It's a song that I really welcome you to listen to. I don't know if you guys actually share the same opinion as I do regarding the chorus, but I would love to know what you think about the chorus and if it sounds murky to you or not. Well, that's all from me, and I'll see you guys in another entry in this feature. See you soon.